A Werewolf Shifter Romance, penned by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Marks and Stillness. The searing metal bit into Iris's forearm before she could recoil. The acrid smell of scorched skin mingled with the overpowering floral fragrance perpetually clinging to Lucinda's personal quarters. She bit down hard on her tongue, tasting the metallic tang of blood, determined to deny the Luna the satisfaction of hearing her cry out. Blocked wolves exuded a muted scent, akin to damp earth after a fire. It was a scent that could be overlooked, a pack member's anomaly that could be disregarded. Concealment had been effortless, as her own body aided in her disguise. "Such a clumsy girl," Lucinda purred, her voice laden with feigned sympathy as she withdrew the heated metal rod. "You truly must exercise greater care when attending to my coiffure. What if you had directed that instrument towards me instead?" Iris kept her gaze lowered, her amber eyes fixed on the gleaming floor. "My apologies, my lady." Through the ornate looking-glass, she observed Lucinda's reflection. Golden tresses cascaded in flawless waves, her icy blue eyes sparkling with an unnerving glint, both beautiful and cruel, utterly out of reach as the Luna of the Valdron Pack. The brand on Iris's arm throbbed in unison with her pulse, joining the intricate pattern of scars that chronicled nearly 5 years of suffering across her skin. "You are forgiven," Lucinda murmured, reaching out to pat Iris's cheek with a deceptive softness. Her fingers lingered, pressing against an old bruise. "Just endeavor not to displease me again." The words held a veiled menace that only Iris could perceive. To any observer, Lucinda Fairmont Valdron personified elegance, a Luna embodying every desirable quality in an alpha's consort, poised, refined, and utterly devoted. But here, in the solitude of these chambers, the facade crumbled, exposing the malevolence beneath. Iris resumed her duties with steady hands, despite the fresh agony. Her fingers moved through familiar gestures of braiding and pinning, crafting the elaborate style Lucinda required for the evening's festivities. The Luna would descend the grand staircase, radiant, offer a sweet smile to Alpha Godric upon his return from patrol, and captivate visiting dignitaries with her charm and wit, while Iris remained unseen as she had mastered the art of being. A memory surfaced unbidden, a frequent visitor during times of duress. She was 14 once more, huddled in the corner of a humble cottage while unseen forces stirred in the darkness beyond. Her mother's hand pressed firmly over her mouth, stifling any sound. "Remain quiet, little wolf," her mother had whispered, her amber eyes, so like Iris's own, wide with terror. "No matter what transpires, you must survive. Promise me." Iris had nodded, tears streaming down her face as she made a pledge she would spend the subsequent 10 years upholding. The intruders had arrived in the pre-dawn hours, their intentions savage and unrestrained, reeking of madness and bloodshed. Her father had shifted instantly, his brown wolf charging toward the entryway with a guttural snarl that vibrated through the rafters. Her mother followed, her white fur erupting across her skin as she joined her mate in a desperate defense. Iris had attempted her first shift that night, feeling the primal surge of her wolf, eager to protect, to combat, to endure. But the sight of her father's throat being torn asunder, her mother's agonizing howl as she fell, had shattered something fundamental within her. The transformation had faltered midway, pain exploding through every nerve as her body struggled and failed to complete the change. The assailants, deeming her merely another human casualty, had departed, leaving her amidst the fallen to await dawn. She had lain there, her wolf trapped within, screaming silently, silenced by trauma too profound for her young psyche to process. For 3 days she had wandered, half-crazed with grief and starvation, until she collapsed near the ramparts of Stronghold Valdron. Mabel had discovered her. The elderly cook, foraging for herbs in the woods, had stumbled upon the unconscious girl. Most would have perceived only another orphaned human, but Mabel's discerning gaze had noted the amber hue in Iris's eyes, detecting the faint, wolf-like scent beneath the grime and blood. poor child," Mabel had murmured, gathering Iris into surprisingly strong arms. "What horrors have you witnessed?" The cook had spirited her away to the castle kitchens, nourished her with broth and bread, and asked no questions as Iris remained silent for weeks. Eventually the girl had spoken, recounting her truth in fragmented whispers. She possessed a wolf, yet it was imprisoned within her, inaccessible, fractured. "It would be best not to speak of that to anyone, dear," Mabel had advised with gentle wisdom. "Wolves who cannot fully shift are treated with less regard than humans who never possess the gift at all. It is safer for all concerned to believe you are merely a foundling without that inherent talent." Thus, Iris had become invisible. She toiled in the kitchens for 6 years, silent and diligent, learning to discern the moods of the castle's inhabitants, anticipating needs before they were voiced, and mastering the art of survival. She was 20 years old when everything irrevocably changed. It was the spring of her 7th year at the stronghold when Alpha Godric wed Lucinda Fairmont. The alliance was political in nature. It was common knowledge that the Fairmont territory commanded vital trade routes, and their pact bolstered Valdron's standing against rival packs. The Alpha had fulfilled his obligation, as leaders invariably do. Lucinda arrived like a harbinger of winter, cloaked in silk and smiles, and within months the castle staff had learned to tread with extreme caution around her. However, her most severe cruelty was reserved for those incapable of resistance, those without the power to challenge her. The incident that sealed Iris's fate was disarmingly straightforward. Alpha Godric returned earlier than anticipated from a border patrol, entering the kitchens with dust adorning his boots and weariness etched upon his broad shoulders. His dark hair was tied back, revealing the strong line of his jaw beneath a meticulously trimmed beard, and his gray eyes swept the room with the innate authority of a leader surveying his domain. For a mere 3 seconds, his gaze alighted upon Iris as she bent over a cutting board. Their eyes met, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition, perhaps, or merely curiosity about the quiet kitchen maiden with the striking amber eyes, 3 heartbeats that had altered the course of everything. Lucinda stood in the doorway, having witnessed that fleeting exchange, and her comely countenance turned ashen. The Luna smiled at her husband, taking his arm with practiced grace, but her icy blue eyes locked onto Iris across the expanse of the room. The following morning, Lucinda demanded that the girl with the peculiar eyes be reassigned as her personal attendant. That was 4 years and 9 months ago. Mabel had attempted an intervention once, 3 years into Iris's service. The elder cook had approached a trusted guard, confiding her concerns about the suspicious injuries that persistently appeared on the Luna's attendant. The guard vanished the subsequent day, reassigned to a perilous frontier post. A young serving girl, who had befriended Iris, disappeared entirely shortly thereafter. The message was stark and unequivocal: interfere and people perish. Thus, Mabel learned to offer what aid she could in secret. Extra sustenance secreted away in Iris's sleeping quarters, healing balms left where she would discover them. Silent companionship in the pre-dawn hours, when Iris's duties afforded her fleeting moments of reprieve. It was the sole kindness Iris experienced in a world that had seemingly forgotten her. "There," Lucinda declared, admiring herself in the mirror. "Adequate work, I suppose. Now, fetch my sapphire blue gown." "Yes, my lady." Iris moved towards the wardrobe, each step measured and deliberate. Her arm still burned where the iron had seared her flesh, yet she had long ago learned to function through pain, to suppress the tremor in her hands, the tears that threatened when the torment became unbearable. Within her chest a stirring commenced. Her wolf, confined and silent for 10 years, pressed against the confines of her trauma. It howled soundlessly, yearning for liberation, desperately seeking to breach the barriers that held it captive. But Iris suppressed it, as she invariably did. The world held no place for broken shifters, no compassion for those unable to complete their transformation. It was preferable to be perceived as human and powerless than to reveal her deficiency and endure even greater scorn. She had made a promise to her mother all those years ago in the darkness: survive, regardless of the cost. So she would endure another night, another day, another year if necessary. She retrieved the sapphire gown from its hanger and turned back to her tormentor, her expression carefully blank. Lucinda was already humming, pleased with herself, anticipating the evening ahead, where she would shine as the epitome of a Luna, while her husband remained oblivious to the monstrosity he had married. And Iris would be there, a spectral presence in the shadows, bearing her scars in stoic silence. Chapter 2. Blood and Adjudication. The clamor of war had finally subsided along the northern frontier, leaving Godric Valdron with nothing but the weight of victory and the pervasive emptiness that invariably followed conflict. 3 weeks ahead of schedule, he guided his warriors back through the mountain passes, homeward bound, eager to cleanse the stench of death from his skin and reclaim his own bed after months away. The setting sun cast the stone ramparts of Stronghold Valdron in hues of amber and gold as they drew near. A beautiful sight, he mused, though beauty had become a distant concept during 5 years of a marriage that felt more akin to a political accord than a union of souls. Lucinda would be there, playing the part of the exquisite Luna, and he, the returning hero. They had both honed their acting skills to perfection. What Godric did not anticipate was the piercing scream that echoed through the castle corridors as he dismounted in the courtyard. Iris's hand trembled as she fastened the final clasp on Lucinda's sapphire gown. The fabric had split along the seam. It was a deliberate tear, inflicted by the Luna herself moments prior, though no one would credit such a truth. Already Lucinda's countenance had contorted into a mask of incandescent fury. "You have ruined it," Lucinda hissed, her voice low enough that no passing servant would overhear. "You clumsy, worthless wretch! This gown cost more than your insignificant existence." "My lady, I beg your pardon." "Silence." The command sliced through the air, and then Lucinda's hand was in Iris's hair, yanking her head back with savage force. "Do you imagine I am blind to what you are? That you have always been a threat?" Iris's vision swam with unshed tears. "Please, I have done nothing." "Your very existence is an affront." The initial lash of the leather whip struck Iris across the shoulders, tearing through her thin garment and drawing blood. She gasped, more from shock than pain. Lucinda had never exhibited such brazenness, such recklessness in leaving marks that could be observed. The Luna was losing control, and that prospect terrified Iris more than the beating itself. The second strike landed across her back, the third coiled around her ribs, and something within Iris, something dormant and compliant for nearly 5 years, finally fractured. Her hand shot out instinctively, catching Lucinda's wrist mid-swing. For one suspended moment, they locked eyes. The Luna, aghast that her victim had dared to retaliate, and Iris, equally astonished by her own audacity. "Release me," Lucinda snarled, her perfect face contorted with rage. Instead, Iris pushed, not with great force, not with violence, but enough to break free of the Luna's grasp, enough to make Lucinda stumble backward, and Lucinda, ever the consummate actress, allowed herself to fall. The Luna hit the floor with a theatrical cry, one hand flying to her head as if she had been struck. The whip landed perfectly in Iris's trembling fingers, placed there by Lucinda's swift maneuvering, though any observer would swear the servant had been wielding it all along. "Guards!" Lucinda's shriek reverberated through the castle halls. "Help! She is assaulting me!" Heavy boots thundered up the stairs. The door burst open, revealing 3 guards with weapons drawn. Their eyes swept across the scene. Their Luna lay on the floor, tears streaming down her immaculate face, a visible red mark blooming on her cheek where she had scratched herself during the fall. And Iris, standing over her, the whip still clutched in her hand, blood trickling down her back. "Seize her!" the lead guard commanded. Iris did not resist as rough hands seized her arms. What would be the point? The evidence was undeniable, the narrative already established. She had attacked the Luna. That was what everyone would believe, what the law would uphold, and the penalty for such a transgression was death. As they dragged her towards the dungeons, Iris caught sight of Mabel in the corridor. The old cook's face had turned pale, her weathered hands pressed to her mouth in horror. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and Iris attempted to convey everything she could not articulate aloud. "Thank you for your kindness. Do not intervene. Save yourself." Then the oppressive darkness of the dungeon stairs enveloped her. Godric was halfway to his chambers when Oswin intercepted him. The beta's weathered face was etched with concern. "Alpha, there has been an incident. Your presence is required immediately." The formality in his oldest friend's tone stirred Godric's wolf restlessly. "What kind of incident?" "The Luna was assaulted by one of her servants. The girl is currently in the dungeons awaiting your judgment." Godric's jaw tightened. Lucinda had a proclivity for creating drama whenever he returned from campaign, typically some elaborate ploy to garner his attention or sympathy. "Assaulted how severely?" "A mark on her face, some bruising, nothing that requires immediate medical attention." Oswin paused, and a subtle shift occurred in his expression. "But Alpha, you should see the servant girl before you render your judgment. There are inconsistencies." Valdron's adhered to no statute of mercy. However, an Alpha's decree could establish a precedent in an instant. Godric enacted such a change that very night. In matters clouded by doubt, the healer examined first. The blade fell last. It was a loophole that only authority could create, and he carved it wide enough for truth to find passage. "That is unusual," Oswin remarked. "You do not question pack law lightly, and the law in this matter is unequivocally clear. A servant raising a hand against the Luna is punishable by immediate execution. No trial, no appeal, no mercy." It was one of the most ancient laws, designed to safeguard pack leaderships from those who might exploit their positions of service. "Very well. Take me to the dungeons first." The cell was dim, illuminated by a single torch, casting dancing shadows upon the damp stone walls. The girl sat huddled in a corner, knees drawn to her chest, and for a moment Godric could not discern her clearly. Then she lifted her head, and amber eyes caught the firelight. Recognition struck him with unexpected force. The kitchen girl from years ago, the one with the peculiar eyes, the one Lucinda had requested as her personal attendant shortly after their marriage. He had barely given her a thought since that day, assuming she had been treated well in the Luna's service. That assumption shattered the instant he truly observed her. "Stand up," he commanded, his alpha voice carrying an innate authority. The girl rose slowly, each movement stiff with evident pain. Her gown was torn and stained with blood, fresh wounds across her shoulders and back that had not been tended. But it was the other markings that made Godric's breath catch in his throat. Old scars layered across her arms, the kind that spoke of repeated trauma over months or years, burns in distinct patterns, cuts that had healed poorly, the evidence of systematic abuse etched across her skin in a language no alpha could misread. His wolf stirred, growling with a protective rage that had no right to exist for a stranger accused of assaulting his Luna. Yet the instinct was undeniable, overwhelming, wrong in a way that made Godric question everything he believed he knew. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended. "Iris, Alpha." Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse with exhaustion or tears or both. "And you attacked my Luna?" Iris swallowed hard, and Godric watched her throat work as she formed the words. I pushed her when she struck me. I didn't mean to. I just wanted her to stop." The honesty of her admission caught him off guard. A guilty person would have denied everything, would have pleaded innocence or claimed self-defense more forcefully. But this girl simply stated the facts as if she had already accepted her fate and saw no point in prolonging the inevitable. "Show me your back. All of it." Iris hesitated, shame and fear warring in her expression, but she obeyed. She turned and let the ruined gown fall forward, exposing skin marked by what must have been years of torture. Fresh welts from the night's beating crossed over older scars, burn marks, cuts, the distinct parallel lines left by a whip used repeatedly. Something dark and furious coiled within Godric's chest. These were not the injuries of a single incident, a moment of violence between servant and mistress. This was a pattern of sustained cruelty concealed beneath long sleeves and careful silence. How long? He demanded. Nearly 5 years, Alpha. 5 years. The entire duration of her service to Lucinda. The entire span of his marriage. And you never spoke of this to anyone? Iris pulled her dress back up, turning to face him again. There was no accusation in her amber eyes, only resignation. Who would have believed me, Alpha? I am merely a servant. She is the Luna, and Pack law is clear about our respective positions. She was right, and that truth burned more intensely than any wound. The law is also clear about your crime tonight, Godric stated, his voice cold because his wolf was too close to the surface, too enraged to trust himself with warmth. Attacking the Luna carries a singular penalty. I know. Iris lifted her chin slightly, and Godric saw the strength beneath her submission. This girl had endured years of abuse without breaking, and she would face death with the same quiet fortitude. I accept my punishment, Alpha. I only ask that my body be burned properly, not left for scavengers. My parents, they deserve better than I could provide them. At least grant me a proper end. The mention of parents struck a tender chord within Godric's chest. Before he could question the impulse, he said, I am ordering a healer to examine you before dawn. Surprise flickered across her features. Alpha, standard procedure for all executions. He lied smoothly. It was not standard at all, but his beta would not question him, and Godric needed time to think. Guards will bring the healer shortly. Cooperate fully. He turned to leave, but paused at the cell door. Without looking back, he added, And Iris, if you are lying to me about those scars, about any of this, I will know. And your death will be far less merciful than the swift end the law prescribes. I am not lying, Alpha, she said softly. I have done many things to survive, but lying has never served me well. Godric left the dungeons with his mind churning and his wolf pacing restlessly beneath his skin. Something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong, and he had not remained alive this long by ignoring his instincts. In her cell, Iris finally allowed herself to break. Tears she had held back for years spilled down her cheeks as she curled into herself, trembling with pain and exhaustion and something that might have been relief. Tomorrow she would die. But at least tonight, someone had finally seen her scars. Deep within her chest, her wolf howled with desperate grief, a sound only she could hear, trapped as it had been since the night her parents were murdered. She pressed her palm against her heart, feeling the creature thrash against its cage of trauma and fear. I'm sorry, she whispered into the darkness. Uncertain if she was offering an apology to her parents, her wolf, or herself, she finally spoke. I made every effort to survive. Truly I did, but I'm now realizing that survival has its limitations. Chapter 3. Truth in the Shadows. Oswin made his way down the dungeon steps 2 hours prior to sunrise, carrying a torch that threw dancing shadows across the damp stone walls. Having served the Valdron lineage for 15 years, he had developed a keen sense for when circumstances felt amiss, and this particular evening, nothing about the situation seemed right. The young woman remained precisely where Godric had left her, her knees drawn to her chest, her amber eyes catching the torchlight as she looked up. She did not flinch as he approached, nor did she recoil or beg for leniency. Instead, she regarded him with the profound weariness of someone who had long ago learned that pleas were futile. The Alpha instructed a healer to attend to you, Oswin stated, unlocking the cell door. However, I wish to speak with you first. Iris tilted her head slightly. Off the record? Because I have been the beta to this pack for a considerable time, Oswin explained, stepping inside and maintaining a respectful distance, long enough to recognize when the evidence doesn't align with the supposed offense. He observed her closely. Your wounds are recent. The injuries to the Lunas are superficial, yet you are the one facing execution. That is how the law operates, Iris replied softly. Servants are not permitted to strike their superiors, irrespective of provocation. Provocation? Oswin knelt, bringing himself to her eye level, his gaze tracing the marks visible on her arms in the flickering light. Tell me about these scars, the older ones. For a prolonged moment, silence prevailed. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she murmured, "What does it matter? I will be deceased by morning, regardless." "It matters because I have served this pack since before you were born, child, and I have never known Alpha Godric to condemn someone without absolute certainty of their guilt. He has ordered the healer to meticulously document your injuries. That is not standard procedure. That is an Alpha seeking justification to reconsider his own judgment." A flicker of something, perhaps hope, or simply astonishment that anyone in authority might genuinely care about the truth, crossed Iris's features. Her hands trembled as she tightened her grip around her knees. "If I tell you," she whispered, "and nothing changes, then I will have betrayed my silence for naught. But if I remain quiet, I die having never spoken my truth." She looked up at him, her amber eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Which path leads to less regret, Beta Oswin?" "The truth always leads to less regret, even when it brings pain." And so Iris recounted everything. She spoke of 4 years and 9 months of relentless torment, of burns, cuts, and beatings that occurred whenever Lucinda felt threatened, bored, or simply felt the urge to be cruel. She detailed how the Luna maintained an impeccable facade in public, how witnesses were silenced through threats or disappearances, and how isolation became her sole refuge from escalating abuse. "I saw the Alpha glance at me once," Iris said, her voice hollow with a profound weariness. "Just once, years ago, for maybe 3 seconds, and she decided I was a threat that needed to be neutralized." Oswin's jaw tightened. He had always suspected Lucinda was cold and calculating, more driven by ambition than by genuine partnership, but this level of systematic cruelty suggested a darkness far beyond mere political maneuvering. "Why did you not report this? Surely someone—" "Mabel attempted once, 3 years ago." Iris's fingers dug into her arms. "The guard she confided in was transferred to the most perilous border post the following day. A servant girl who had shown me kindness vanished that very night. The message was clear: speak up and people perish." This corroborated what Oswin knew of Lucinda's methods. The Luna had always been adept at manipulating circumstances to her advantage, at making problems disappear before they could pose a threat to her standing. "There is something else," Iris added, her voice dropping even lower. "Something I have never revealed to anyone except Mabel. And she only knows because she found me when I first arrived here." Oswin waited, sensing they were approaching the crux of the mystery surrounding this young woman. "I am not human," Iris stated. "I have a wolf. I've always possessed one, but it has been trapped within me since I was 14 years old, since the night rogue wolves murdered my parents, and I witnessed their demise." The confession hung in the air between them, weighted with years of silence and shame. "I attempted to shift that night," she continued, her gaze fixed on her hands, as if they belonged to another. "Tried to transform, to fight, to save them. But the trauma was too overwhelming. My body began the change, then seized mid-transformation. The most excruciating pain I have ever endured. My wolf became stuck, imprisoned behind the fear and grief. I have never been able to complete a shift since." Oswin drew a sharp breath. A shifter whose wolf was blocked was a rare and tragic case, considered defective according to pack prejudices. Such individuals were treated with even less regard than humans who had never possessed the gift. It was no wonder she had kept it hidden. "Why tell me this now?" "Because if I have a confirmed wolf, even a compromised one, I possess legal rights." Iris lifted her chin with a fragile dignity. "A human servant does not. Perhaps not enough to save my life, but enough to demand a thorough investigation. And perhaps, just perhaps, that investigation will expose the truth of what the Luna is beneath her deceptive facade." Clever girl, Oswin thought with a grudging admiration. Even facing imminent death, she was strategizing, attempting to shield others from enduring a similar fate. "If I can establish that you have a wolf," he said slowly, "everything changes. You will have the right to contest the Luna's account, to demand a trial by combat if you choose. But I require evidence, and I need it before dawn." You could demand trial by combat, Iris mused, her mouth twisting into a wry grimace. With a wolf that refuses to surface? That is not a trial. That is execution in disguise. Godric's response was resolute. Then we shall forge a different kind of trial, one built upon witnesses, ledgers, and scars. The healer will be able to sense it. Blocked does not mean absent, merely inaccessible. Oswin rose to his feet, his decision firm. Remain here. Say nothing to anyone else until I return. He exited the cell and immediately sought out individuals who had served in proximity to the Luna's chambers. The late hour proved advantageous. Weary servants were more inclined to speak candidly, their fear lessened by the cloak of darkness. A young maid confessed that she had observed Iris bearing fresh injuries on multiple occasions, but admitted, "We were informed the girl was accident-prone, my lord. Accidents do happen." An older steward reluctantly confirmed that the food provisions for the Luna's chambers never included portions for her personal attendant, despite the established custom of servants dining when their mistresses did. "I found it peculiar," he stated, "but it was not my place to question the Luna's domestic arrangements." And then there was Mabel. Oswin found the elderly cook in her kitchen, grinding herbs with an almost mechanical precision, though her weathered face was etched with distress. "You know about the girl in the dungeons," Oswin stated, not as a question. Mabel's hand stilled. "Iris, her name is Iris. Tell me what you know." The narrative that unfolded painted a picture of sustained abuse that ignited a protective rage within Oswin's wolf. Mabel had found Iris a decade prior, near death from grief and trauma, and had offered the orphaned girl sanctuary. She had watched, helpless, as Lucinda systematically dismantled that same girl over years of service. "I attempted to intervene once," Mabel whispered, tears tracing paths down her aged cheeks. "But the Luna made it unequivocally clear. Interfere, and more people would suffer. So I remained silent and loathed myself for it." "That ends tonight," Oswin vowed. The healer arrived as the first faint light of pre-dawn began to seep through the high dungeon windows. She was an older woman, possessing a deep understanding of both medicine and the subtle energies governing shifter physiology. Her examination of Iris was thorough and conducted in an atmosphere of intense silence, while Oswin observed from the cell entrance. "Well?" he inquired, once she finally stepped back. The healer's expression was somber. "The physical injuries are extensive and clearly indicate patterns of repeated trauma over many years. Burns, lacerations, evidence of malnutrition, and systematic abuse." She paused, then added quietly, "And there is something else. This girl possesses a wolf." Iris's eyes widened in astonishment, as if even she had not fully believed it would be discernible. "The wolf is blocked," the healer continued, "trapped behind severe psychological trauma. But it is present, strong and vital, pressing against barriers this girl erected to shield herself from pain she could not process. She is unequivocally a shifter. Beta Oswin, just one who has been unable to complete her transformation." Everything shifted in that instant. Pack law was unambiguous on one point. Shifters held rights that humans did not. Iris was no longer merely a servant who had assailed the Luna. She was a pack member with a confirmed wolf, entitled to a proper investigation and the possibility of trial by combat should she choose to challenge her accuser. Oswin wasted no time. He meticulously gathered his evidence, the testimonies, the healer's findings, the documentation of Iris's injuries, and presented it directly to Godric's chambers as the sun crested the mountains. The Alpha was already awake, gazing out his window with the air of a man who had wrestled with impossible choices throughout the night. He turned as Oswin entered, his gray eyes turbulent with barely suppressed emotion. "Tell me you found something," Godric stated. "Tell me there is a reason to doubt what appears obvious." "There are dozens of reasons, Alpha." Oswin laid bare everything he had uncovered, observing his friend's expression darken with each revelation. "The girl has endured years of torture. Multiple witnesses corroborate this, and the healer has confirmed she is a shifter with a blocked wolf, which grants her legal rights we cannot disregard." Godric's hands clenched into fists. "Bring her to my private chambers, not the audience hall. I want no witnesses to this conversation until I fully comprehend what is transpiring within my own territory." When Iris was brought before him an hour later, clean and clad in fresh garments, yet still bearing the visible marks of her injuries, Godric forced himself to truly see her, not as a servant, not as an accused criminal, but as a person who might have been failed by everyone around her, including himself. "Show me," he commanded, his voice rough. "Show me everything the Luna inflicted upon you." Iris hesitated, shame warring with self-preservation in her amber eyes. But she complied, removing the simple tunic she had been given to reveal skin etched with the evidence of years of calculated cruelty. Fresh welts from the previous night's assault overlaid older scars. Burn patterns indicative of hot irons deliberately applied to flesh. Lacerations inflicted with chilling precision rather than impulsive passion. The undeniable testament to torture that had been both methodical and sustained. Godric's wolf surged forward with a guttural snarl that vibrated through his ribcage. The sound escaped his throat involuntarily, a low, menacing growl that spoke of barely leashed violence. His eyes flashed gold as the beast fought for dominance, desperate to protect this girl whose wounds made even a seasoned warrior's gut clench with a primal urge to lash out. Iris stumbled backward, her amber eyes widening in sheer terror. She struck the wall and slid down, her arms coming up to shield her head, in a gesture that spoke of deeply ingrained conditioning. She anticipated violence from figures of authority, expected pain from those wielding power. That realization fractured something within Godric's chest. "I am not going to harm you," he said, forcing his wolf into submission, modulating his voice to the gentlest tone he could manage. "Iris, look at me. I am not going to hurt you." She peered at him through her arms, trembling, and in that moment, Godric saw what he should have recognized years ago: a victim who had survived through silence, who had learned that submission was the only path to continued existence. "Tell me everything," he said softly, "and this time I will listen." Chapter 4. Protective Instincts. Godric forced his breathing to steady, wrestling his wolf back down with an effort that left him trembling. 5 years of marriage to a woman he had perceived as cold, but civilized. And all the while, she had been tormenting an innocent girl within his own castle. The rage that consumed him was volcanic, barely contained beneath years of alpha discipline. "I am sorry," he said again, his voice softer. "Iris, I give you my word. I will not cause you harm, but I need you to trust me enough to answer my questions truthfully." She slowly lowered her arms, her amber eyes still bearing weariness, but no longer quite so much terror. "What do you wish to know, Alpha?" "Everything, from the beginning." So she recounted not only the beatings, the burns, the starvation, and the isolation, but also the 10 years preceding it, about parents who had loved her, who had tried to shield her from the dangers of the night, about witnessing their deaths while her wolf screamed to be freed, only to seize mid-transformation and trap itself behind walls of trauma she could not breach. "Mabel found me 3 days later," Iris stated quietly. "I was near death, barely conscious. She took me in, gave me work in the kitchens, and advised me to conceal my nature because shifters who cannot shift properly are treated worse than humans who never possess the gift." Godric's jaw tightened. She was right, and that truth shamed him. Pack hierarchy was built upon strength, and those perceived as weak were often discarded or mistreated. He had never questioned that structure until this moment, until he saw its devastating consequences etched across this girl's skin. "And then Lucinda requested you as her personal attendant." "Yes," Iris confirmed, "because you looked at me once, Alpha. Just once, for perhaps 3 seconds, when you visited the kitchens after a patrol." She noticed it and decided I was a threat. Godric vaguely recalled that day. He had been exhausted, hungry, seeking a quick meal before confronting his paperwork. He had noticed the quiet girl with unusual eyes and thought nothing more of it. 3 seconds that had sealed this girl's fate for nearly 5 years. "She was mistaken," he said roughly, You were never a threat to her position. I barely even remembered you existed." A flicker of pain crossed Iris's face. "I think that's what made it worse for her. She destroyed me for years over a glance that held no significance." Godric stood abruptly, needing to move before his composure completely shattered. He walked to the window, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. "You will not die today. The execution has been cancelled. You are being placed under protective custody while I thoroughly investigate these allegations." "Alpha, that is not a request," Iris began, but Godric interrupted. "It is an order. You have a confirmed wolf, which means you have legal rights regardless of what transpired last night. I will utilize those rights to gain time for a proper investigation. But the Luna," Godric's voice dropped to a dangerous low, "will answer some very difficult questions, and she will do so without knowing that you are the one who provided testimony. As far as she will be concerned, this is standard procedure following an incident involving pack members with confirmed wolves." Iris stared at him, a mixture of hope and disbelief warring in her expression. "You believe me?" "Yes." The word came out with absolute certainty. "I have seen sufficient evidence to know you are speaking the truth. What I do not yet grasp is the full extent of what has been happening within my own territory while I have been oblivious." He summoned Oswin, who arrived within moments. "Take her to the guest quarters in the East Wing. The comfortable ones, not the cells. Post guards at her door, but make it clear they are there for her protection, not as imprisonment. She is to be treated as an honored guest, not a prisoner." "Yes, Alpha." Oswin's expression conveyed his approval of the decision. "And send for Mabel. I want her testimony recorded officially." The old cook arrived within the hour, her weathered face pale but resolute. Under Godric's direct questioning and an Alpha command to speak only the truth, she confirmed everything Iris had stated and added details that sent a chill down his spine. Incidents she had witnessed, injuries she had secretly tended to. The servant girl who had vanished after showing Iris kindness. "Why did you not come to me?" Godric demanded, though he already knew the answer. "Because I attempted it once, Alpha." Mabel's voice trembled. "And people died for it." The Luna made it unequivocally clear. Interference would only lead to further suffering, so I provided whatever aid I could in silence and despised myself for my cowardice. "You are not a coward. You survived an impossible situation." Godric dismissed her gently, then spent the next several hours interrogating servants who had worked in close proximity to Lucinda's chambers. The pattern that emerged was damning. Every single individual questioned admitted to observing signs of abuse, unusual occurrences, suspicious injuries. They had all either assumed it was not their place to question the Luna's domestic arrangements or had been too fearful of retaliation to speak out. By midday, Godric possessed enough testimony to know the truth beyond any doubt. However, knowing the truth and acting upon it were two vastly different matters when political considerations were involved. He summoned his council of elders that evening, presenting the evidence in a cold, clinical manner. The three ancient shifters listened in grave silence as he outlined the pattern of abuse, the medical documentation, and the testimonies from multiple witnesses. "The evidence is clear," he concluded. "My Luna has violated the code of honor by systematically abusing a pack member for years." Elder Thornwick, the eldest of the three, stroked his silver beard thoughtfully. "The evidence is indeed disturbing, Alpha, but we must consider the political ramifications. Lucinda Fairmont is the daughter of Alpha Brennan of the Fairmont Territory. Their alliance provides crucial trade routes and military support. To accuse her publicly without irrefutable proof could provoke war." "I have irrefutable proof," Godric growled. "You have testimony and medical evidence," Elder Moira corrected gently. "But Lucinda will claim the girl is fabricating, that the injuries are self-inflicted or from other sources. She will assert this is a conspiracy to remove her from power, and her father will either believe her or, at the very least, feign belief, because admitting his daughter's guilt would bring shame upon his entire lineage." Godric's hands clenched into fists on the table. "So I am to do nothing? Allow her to continue?" We are suggesting you proceed with caution, Elder Brennan interrupted. Build your case meticulously. Gather further evidence if possible. Most importantly, prepare for the political fallout before making any formal accusations. This is not merely about justice for one abused girl. It is about the stability of your entire pack and the potential for conflict with a powerful neighbor. The words tasted like ashes in his mouth, but Godric recognized their wisdom. He required time. He needed to be methodical rather than reactive, even though every instinct screamed at him to drag Lucinda before the pack and expose her crimes immediately. Very well, I will continue the investigation discreetly, but the girl, Iris, remains under my protection. Of course, Elder Moira nodded. She has confirmed wolf status, even if blocked. That grants her legal standing. We recommend placing her in comfortable quarters under the pretense of recuperation from her injuries. Inform the Luna that it is standard procedure while the incident is reviewed. That night, Godric visited Iris in the guest quarters. She had been bathed, dressed in clean clothes, provided with food and medical attention. Yet she sat on the floor beside the bed rather than in it, as if comfort itself were an alien concept to her. "You can use the bed," he said gently. "That's what it's for." "It feels wrong," she admitted quietly, "like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." Godric settled into a chair across from her, deliberately maintaining a distance so she wouldn't feel cornered or threatened. "You are a pack member, a confirmed wolf. This means you deserve proper treatment, no matter what Lucinda may have led you to believe. She will know I spoke with you. She will find a way to retaliate, but she will not harm you again. I give you my word." These words left his lips with the undeniable weight of alpha authority, a promise that would hold him as firmly as any solemn vow. She believes this is simply standard procedure following an altercation between pack members. She is unaware that you have provided a statement. She does not know I am investigating her personally. Iris drew her knees up to her chest, a defensive posture that made her appear younger than her 24 years. What happens next? I am examining her history. If this is not the first time she has engaged in such behavior, there will be corroborating proof. Godric leaned forward slightly. "However, I require your assistance with a matter. I need to comprehend the nature of your wolf." She became tense. "What about it?" "The healer stated that your wolf is suppressed, not absent. It has been attempting to manifest, but is unable to overcome trauma-induced barriers. Has it always been this way?" "Since the night your parents met their demise?" Iris nodded slowly. "I can sense its presence within me, clawing at the defenses I erected to safeguard myself. Occasionally, when I experience distress or fear, it surges forward, but it never manages to break through entirely. The transformation commences and then abruptly ceases. It's as if my body recalls the failure of the initial attempt and refuses to risk another. What if those barriers could be dismantled? What if a healer could assist you in completing the transformation?" Her amber eyes widened considerably. "Is that a possibility?" "I am uncertain, but I am eager to discover the answer." Godric maintained her gaze. "If you were capable of shifting fully and properly, your legal standing would be significantly enhanced. More crucially, you would gain access to instincts and inherent strengths that have been imprisoned by trauma." "I am apprehensive," she whispered. "What if I attempt and falter once more? What if the agony proves to be too intense? In that event, we will cease. No one will compel you to undertake anything, Iris. Yet I believe you possess a fortitude exceeding your own perception. You endured 5 years of systematic torment without succumbing. That requires a profound inner strength that most individuals never have to uncover." A subtle change occurred in her expression. Hope, fragile and hesitant, yet undeniably present. "Why are you aiding me? You scarcely know me." "Because a part of my wolf recognizes something kindred in yours." Godric contemplated this, but refrained from vocalizing it. "Because witnessing your wounds ignited a desire within me to dismantle the world. Because I have spent 5 years in a union characterized by obligation, devoid of warmth. And you are the first individual in a duration I can scarcely recall who has evoked genuine emotion within me." Instead, he stated plainly, "Because it is the morally correct course of action, and because I failed you once by being oblivious to the events unfolding within my own domain, I will not fail you again." Iris observed him for a considerable duration, then nodded slowly. "Thank you, Alpha Godric. Simply Godric when we are alone. You need not maintain formality with me." Her lips curved into the faintest semblance of a smile, the first he had witnessed from her. "That feels even more inappropriate than utilizing the bed. You will grow accustomed to it." He rose, moving towards the exit. "Seek rest tonight. Tomorrow we will commence working with the healer to gain a deeper understanding of your wolf." And Iris. She looked up at him, her amber eyes reflecting the lamplight. "You are secure here. Whatever transpires next, you have my protection." As he departed, Godric found himself contemplating her in ways entirely unrelated to duty or political considerations, and intrinsically connected to the bond his wolf insisted existed. Dangerous contemplations, given his ongoing marital status, yet he could no longer suppress them. Then he could deny the sunrise. Something fundamental had shifted the instant he had truly perceived her scars, and there would be no return. Chapter 5. Threads of Truth. The emissary returned after 3 weeks of diligent searching, accompanying a woman who had absconded from the Fairmont territory 5 years prior under an assumed identity. She sat in Godric's private study, her hands trembling as they clasped a cup of tea prepared by Mabel, her eyes clouded with memories she had striven for years to obliterate. "Describe your tenure as Lucinda Fairmont's personal attendant," Godric requested gently, though a restless, predatory instinct stirred beneath his skin. The woman, identified as Nessa, drew a shaky breath. "I served her for 8 months before my escape. Her cruelty was meticulously administered. She never inflicted visible marks. She invariably had pre-prepared explanations for any injury that might be noticed." Her voice faltered. The burns were her preferred method. She claimed they instilled proper respect. Oswin meticulously documented every utterance while Godric listened, his anger escalating with each detail that echoed Iris's account. Upon Nessa's conclusion, he had her statement formally attested to by the council elders in strict confidence. Coupled with the preceding evidence, the recurring pattern was undeniable. However, Lucinda was the sole daughter of Alpha Brennan Fairmont. Publicly accusing her without irrefutable proof and astute political maneuvering risked precipitating an interterritorial conflict. Godric recognized the necessity of a strategic approach, even as every instinct urged him to summon his wife before the pack and expose her transgressions immediately. Consequently, he continued his investigation discreetly, conferring with the elders regarding divorce proceedings while maintaining a semblance of normalcy with Lucinda. She remained convinced that the incident with Iris had been resolved, that the servant was merely recuperating before facing her assigned punishment. In the interim, Godric found himself dedicating extensive hours to the guest quarters where Iris resided. "Officially, I am concluding my investigation," he informed her one evening, settling into the chair opposite her position by the window. "But in truth, I merely wish to ascertain your healing progress." Iris looked up from the book Mabel had provided. Surprise flickered across her countenance. "Why? Because I am concerned for your well-being." The words emerged with a sincerity that surpassed his intention. "Is that so difficult to accept? Yes?" She set the book aside. Individuals in positions of authority do not typically concern themselves with broken servants. "Alpha Godric," he corrected, "and you are not broken. You are a survivor." A softening occurred in her amber eyes. Over the ensuing days, their conversations deepened significantly. She shared accounts of her parents, her father's patient tutelage, her mother's gentle wit, and the manner in which they imbued their modest cottage with warmth and security. He spoke of the burdens of leadership, the isolation of politically motivated marriages, and the weight of decisions impacting countless lives. "Did you love her?" Iris inquired one evening. "When you married Lucinda?" Godric contemplated a falsehood, but a certain quality in Iris compelled honesty. "No. I held respect for the alliance she represented. I harbored a hope that affection might develop over time, but there was always an underlying coolness beneath her charm, something I rationalized as mere aristocratic reserve. He met her gaze. I was mistaken, and my lack of perception cost you years of suffering. You could not have known. I should have. A competent alpha is aware of the events transpiring within his own territory. The healer commenced working with Iris on her suppressed wolf, employing techniques designed to aid trauma survivors in re-establishing their connection to their shifter nature. Godric attended the sessions, ostensibly to grasp the medical intricacies, but primarily because he could not bear to be absent. He observed her face contort with intense concentration as she attempted to surmount the psychological barriers that had protected her for a decade. He watched her eyes flash amber as her wolf surged forth, only to collide with invisible impediments. He observed her tears of frustration when the transformation faltered midway, leaving her gasping on the floor. "I cannot," she sobbed, after one particularly arduous session. "It has been too long. The damage is irreparable." Godric knelt beside her instinctively, one hand hovering near her shoulder, yet not quite making contact. "May I?" She nodded, and he gently drew her into his embrace, feeling her tremble with exhaustion and disappointment. His wolf purred with contentment at her proximity, at the profound rightness of offering solace. Something shifted within his chest, a recognition that transcended mere attraction or sympathy. "You will achieve it," he murmured into her hair. "I have faith in you, even if you do not." Iris drew back slightly, looking up at him with eyes that held an ineffable quality. "Why does it matter so profoundly to you, whether I can shift or not?" "Because you matter to me," he thought, but could not articulate. "Because my wolf recognizes yours, even through the barriers. Because you are beginning to feel essential in ways that alarm me." "Because everyone deserves to be whole," he stated instead. Their faces were intimately close, their breaths commingling in the space between them. Godric felt an irresistible pull, observed the dilation of her pupils, and detected the subtle alteration in her scent that signaled burgeoning attraction. It would be so effortlessly simple to bridge that gap, to taste her lips, to... He abruptly withdrew, rising and establishing a necessary distance between them. "I ought to depart. It is late." Confusion and hurt flickered across Iris's face before she composed her expression. "Of course, thank you for your assistance, Alpha." The formality caused a pang, but he deserved it. He was still married, still bound by obligation, if not affection. Embracing Iris, regardless of his wolf's ardent desire, would introduce a complication neither of them needed, yet by the gods he yearned to. The breakthrough arrived amidst a violent thunderstorm 3 weeks into the investigation. Rain lashed against the castle ramparts, while lightning intermittently illuminated Iris's chambers in stark flashes. Godric had been engaged in reviewing documents pertaining to Lucinda's familial ties in adjacent rooms when he heard a piercing scream. He burst through her doorway to find Iris curled on the floor, her eyes wide with terror, her body racked with violent tremors. Not from physical agony, but from recollection. "They came in the rain," she gasped, barely registering his presence. "The rogues! The thunder masked the sounds of them breaching our door. I can hear my mother screaming. I can smell the blood." Godric dropped to his knees beside her. "Iris, you are safe. You are here with me. The storm is merely weather." But she was lost in the throes of a flashback. 14 years old again, witnessing the demise of her parents. Her breathing became rapid and shallow, teetering on the precipice of a panic attack that could prove fatal. "Listen to my voice," he commanded, with undeniable alpha authority, compelling her focus toward him. "Feel my hand on your shoulder. You are not in that cottage. You are within the stronghold, and I swear upon my life that nothing will harm you here." Her amber eyes slowly locked onto his. The present bled back into the past. "Godric, I am here." He pulled her against his chest once more, one hand gently stroking her hair while the other held her steady. "I have you." Thunder boomed outside, and she flinched. He began speaking, recounting tales from his own youth, about learning to shift for the first time and inadvertently demolishing his father's study, about Oswin instructing him in tracking by scent when he was merely 10 years old. Anything to keep her grounded in the present, to steer her away from the memories that threatened to engulf her. Gradually, her breathing steadied. Her trembling subsided, and then, so softly he nearly missed it, she whispered, "Thank you." They remained in that embrace for hours, his back against the wall and her curled against his chest, listening to the storm subside as he held her in protective custody. Somewhere within those somber hours, Godric conceded a truth his wolf had grasped from the very instant he had observed her scars. This was not merely a matter of duty or sympathy. This was something far more perilous. As the first light of dawn finally crept through the windows, Iris stirred against him. "You stayed all night. You required my presence." He carefully extricated himself, every muscle protesting the movement. "How are you feeling?" "Embarrassed. You are the alpha, and You survived a traumatic memory triggered by the weather. There is no shame in that." He stood, offering his hand to assist her in rising. When her fingers brushed his, that familiar electric current surged through them both. "Iris, I need to convey something to you." She looked up at him, her amber eyes wary. "What?" He ought to inform her about the investigation's progress, about how close he was to amassing sufficient evidence to confront Lucinda, to maintain the professional detachment that was rapidly eroding between them. Instead, he heard himself declare, "You are no longer merely a responsibility to me." Her breath hitched. "What am I then?" "Everything." His wolf whispered, "Mine." But he could not utter those words. "Not yet. Not while I am still legally bound to another woman, no matter how devoid of substance that bond has become." "Someone I care about," he stated carefully, "more than is likely prudent, given the circumstances." Something bright and delicate bloomed on her expression. Hope mingled with apprehension. "I care about you too, but I do not know how to navigate this. I have never been permitted to simply experience emotions. Everything was predicated on survival. Then we will discover it together." He inclined his head slowly. No pressure. A sharp rap interrupted the moment. Oswin's voice emanated from beyond the door. "Alpha, we have encountered a complication." Godric opened it to find his beta holding a piece of parchment. His expression was grim. "One of Lucinda's servants was apprehended questioning the guards regarding your visits here. She has been relaying information to the Luna concerning the amount of time you are spending with the girl." Ice flooded Godric's veins. If Lucinda suspected the investigation had transcended routine procedure, she would either flee or escalate. Either outcome presented significant danger. "What knowledge does the Luna possess? That you have been visiting Iris daily? That you appear personally invested in her recovery? She is unaware of the testimonies we have collected, but she is sufficiently suspicious to begin posing questions." Godric's jaw clenched. The investigation was not yet complete. He still required formal pronouncements from the council acknowledging the evidence before he could proceed with divorce proceedings. But time had just run out. "We must expedite our actions," he stated. "Schedule a private council meeting for tomorrow night. I will present all that we have compiled and demand a formal verdict on Lucinda's suitability as Luna. And if they determine we require additional time, I will exercise my prerogative as Alpha to dissolve the marriage on grounds of code violation. It will undoubtedly ignite political turmoil, but I will not jeopardize Iris's safety for diplomatic expediency." After Oswin departed, Godric turned back to Iris. She stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, appearing small and vulnerable in a manner that amplified his protective instincts to a roaring intensity. "This is my culpability," she murmured quietly. "I should have remained concealed. I ought to have." "No." He crossed to her in 3 swift strides. "This is Lucinda's fault, all of it, and it will conclude imminently. I give you my assurance." She looked up at him, her amber eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "What will become of me when it does conclude? When the investigation is finished and you no longer need to visit?" The question held layers of significance that he could not fully address at this juncture. However, he could offer sincerity. "I will still visit, not because it is a requirement, but because it is my desire." He lifted one hand, carefully, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "You will not be rid of me so readily, Iris." Her smile was faint but genuine, and Godric found himself committing it to memory. The way it softened her entire countenance, offering a glimpse of the woman she might evolve into once she was truly liberated from fear. Tomorrow, he would confront the council. Tomorrow, he would initiate the formal process of removing Lucinda from her position of authority. But tonight, he would ensure Iris understood that she was no longer alone. Chapter 6. The mask falls. The summons arrived with the dawn, delivered by riders bearing the Fairmont insignia. Godric broke the seal with steady hands, while Oswin observed, both aware of its contents before the parchment unrolled. "Alpha Brennan Fairmont demands a resolution to the incident involving his daughter within 5 days," Godric read aloud. "He expects either the servant's execution or substantial financial compensation for the affront to his family's honor. Failure to comply will result in the severance of trade agreements and the withdrawal of military support." Oswin's expression grew somber. "They are implicitly threatening war. Because they are aware that I cannot afford an open conflict at this precise moment. The northern frontier is still recuperating from recent engagements." Godric placed the letter down with deliberate care. "However, I cannot execute an innocent woman, nor offer blood money for transgressions she did not commit. What course of action will you pursue? Will you force their hand before they force yours?" Godric's jaw tightened. "Schedule the council meeting for this evening. A public assembly in the Great Hall, not private chambers. I desire witnesses to all proceedings." What Godric did not realize was that Lucinda had already unearthed fragments of his investigation. Her network of informants had finally pieced together sufficient information to recognize her peril. The spy she had embedded among the servants had reported his frequent visits to Iris, the evidence being gathered, and the emissary who had returned from Fairmont territory with a former attendant. She stood in her chambers at that moment, gazing at her reflection in the mirror, her mind racing through potential scenarios. Flight would signify an admission of guilt. Denial would prove futile if he possessed concrete evidence. However, one option existed that might salvage the situation, allowing her to portray herself as the victim one final time. The poison she had procured from a traveling merchant sat in a small vial on her dressing table, a sufficient quantity to induce severe illness without proving fatal. Combined with the antidote she had ingested an hour prior, if she were to collapse during the council meeting, framing it as the servant girl's ultimate act of retribution, then all of Godric's meticulously gathered evidence would be rendered inconsequential against the immediate proof of attempted murder. She smiled at her reflection, her ice-blue eyes calculating. She had been engaged in this charade for 5 years. One more performance would present no undue challenge. The great hall gradually filled as evening approached. Council members assumed their positions at the high table, while pack members congregated in the space, drawn by rumors of significant proceedings. Iris remained in her quarters under escort. Godric had insisted she abstain from the assembly for her own safety. Lucinda made her entrance with impeccable timing. Attired in sapphire silk that complemented her eyes, her golden hair meticulously arranged in intricate braids, she moved through the throng, accepting expressions of sympathy for her ordeal, projecting the image of a stoic Luna who had endured an assault by a deranged servant. "My lords, my ladies," Godric's voice resonated across the hall, immediately commanding an absolute silence. "We convene this evening to address critical matters pertaining to pack law and the responsibilities inherent in leadership." Lucinda took her seat beside him, embodying the picture of composed nobility. Yet Godric observed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the manner in which her gaze flickered towards the guards stationed throughout the hall, his most trusted warriors, specifically selected for this occasion. 3 weeks ago, Godric continued, an incident occurred that appeared straightforward. My Luna was allegedly assaulted by her personal attendant. Pack law concerning such offenses is unequivocal. But what initially seemed simple has unveiled a corruption that threatens the very bedrock of our territory. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Lucinda's fingers tightened on the arms of her chair, though her countenance remained serene. I have dedicated these past weeks to investigating not merely the incident itself, but the pervasive pattern of behavior that precipitated it. What I have discovered demands justice. He gestured to Oswin, who stepped forward, carrying a stack of documents. Testimony from numerous witnesses, medical documentation, accounts from previous attendants, all collectively painting a picture of systematic abuse spanning several years. Alpha, surely you are not suggesting, Lucinda began, her voice imbued with a perfect semblance of confusion and hurt. I am not suggesting. I am articulating facts substantiated by evidence that will be presented to this council for formal deliberation. Godric's gray eyes were as cold as winter stone. But first, I invoke my inherent right to question the accused directly. Lucinda's carefully constructed facade faltered for a fleeting moment, a flash of calculation evident in her eyes before she recomposed her expression into one of innocent bewilderment. Accused, Godric? What is this truly about? Is it her? Her voice lowered to a tone of wounded vulnerability. The servant girl. You have been visiting her daily. The entire castle is aware. Is this some elaborate pretense to, what? Unmask a fiend wearing my wife's visage? Godric shifted closer. Tell me, Lucinda, how many of your personal staff have vanished or perished under peculiar circumstances? The council possesses those figures. Shall I present them? The hall fell into a profound stillness. Lucinda's hand drifted towards her wine chalice, the very one she had personally filled before seating herself, the one secretly infused with a potent poison intended to orchestrate her collapse, serving as seemingly irrefutable evidence of the servant's ongoing reprisal. However, before she could partake, Godric continued. I must also inform you that guards have been observing your every move for the past week, every action, every discourse, every preparation of your sustenance. Lucinda froze, the chalice suspended midway to her lips. Drink, Godric commanded, with an authority so primal it caused even the most formidable wolves present to shift uncomfortably. If you are blameless, you have no cause to fear a beverage you yourself prepared. She carefully placed the chalice back on the table. I am simply not parched, and then you will not object if we have it analyzed. He signaled to a guard who stepped forward, taking possession of the chalice while also proceeding to search your chambers for any antidote you may have administered earlier. The color drained from Lucinda's countenance. Pack members exchanged whispers of shock and bewilderment, attempting to grasp the unfolding events. You orchestrated a deception, she stammered. Your true terror is now apparent. I anticipated your final gambit. Did you truly believe I would not foresee your attempt to poison yourself and falsely implicate Iris one last time? Godric rose, his presence dominating the hall. Guards observed you introducing a substance into that wine. The medic will confirm its toxic nature and will locate the antidote in your chambers, acquired from a merchant whose records indicate you purchased both items 2 days prior. Elder Thornwick stood, his expression grave. Alpha, these are grave assertions. If they are true, they are true. A captain of the guard advanced. I personally witnessed the Luna adding powder to her wine cup before entering this hall. I was prepared to intervene had she attempted to consume it. Lucinda's composure fractured completely. She sprang to her feet, her ice-blue eyes ablaze with a fury that contorted her beautiful features into something grotesque. You presume to judge me? I am the Luna of this pack, daughter of Alpha Brennan Fairmont. That girl was insignificant, a broken servant who deserved every moment of suffering I inflicted. The confession resonated throughout the hall, damning in its starkness. She deserved it because you regarded her. Lucinda continued, Too far gone to cease now. 3 seconds, Godric. You looked at her for 3 seconds, and I perceived it. The interest in your eyes, the resonance your wolf felt. So I removed her from your presence. I dismantled her piece by piece, day by day, until nothing remained that could jeopardize my standing. You subjected an innocent woman to torment for nearly 5 years because of 3 seconds of casual regard. Godric's voice was lethally calm. You murdered servants who sought to aid her. You transgressed every tenet of honor a Luna is sworn to uphold. Honor? Lucinda scoffed, the sound brittle and desperate. You speak of honor while clearly siding with a former indentured servant? This entire inquiry is merely your justification for desiring to replace me with someone younger, more pliable, easier to manipulate. That is sufficient. Elder Moira's voice cut through Lucinda's impassioned speech. Luna Lucinda, you have admitted to heinous acts of systematic torment and attempted murder. The evidence is overwhelming. This council has no recourse but to proceed. A new voice interjected, cold, commanding, and entirely unexpected. Alpha Brennan Fairmont strode into the hall, his silver-streaked hair and stern visage unmistakably identifying him as Lucinda's father. Flanking him were several Fairmont warriors, their presence immediately escalating the tension among the Valdron Pack. Father. Lucinda's expression shifted to one of profound relief. Thank the heavens. Tell them this is preposterous. Tell them. I received notification 2 hours ago regarding tonight's proceedings. Brennan interrupted, his face like carved stone. I came without delay because I needed to ascertain with my own senses whether my daughter had truly brought such opprobrium upon our lineage. He approached the high dais, and Godric observed that the elder Alpha's gaze did not quite meet Lucinda's pleading eyes. I heard her confession, Brennan stated quietly. Every word. I was positioned outside the hall, awaiting an appropriate entrance. Instead, I overheard my daughter confessing to years of torture, to murder, to a betrayal of the Luna's sacred obligations. He finally looked at Lucinda, his expression devoid of anything but cold disappointment. You are not of my blood. Father, no. The Fairmont family hereby severs all association with Lucinda Fairmont Valdron. We repudiate her actions, her transgressions, and her very existence. She speaks solely for herself, not for our dominion or our ancestral line. Brennan turned to Godric. Alpha Valdron, on behalf of my dominion, I offer a formal apology for the blight we inflicted upon your lands. We offer no defense for her conduct and will not challenge any judgment you render. The political maneuvering was a masterpiece of calculated cruelty. By publicly discrediting Lucinda, Brennan preserved his family's reputation and removed any pretext for conflict. He had sacrificed his own daughter to safeguard his territory's standing. Lucinda stood immobilized, betrayed by the very father she had relied upon to shield her from repercussions. You are abandoning me. You abandoned honor. You abandoned decency. You have brought shame upon all that our family represents. Brennan's voice was flat, final. Whatever befalls you now, you have earned. Elder Thornwick rose with somber dignity. Lucinda Fairmont, formerly of Valdron. This council finds you culpable of systematic abuse of a pack member, of murder through negligence and malice, of violation of the Luna's code of honor, and of attempted poisoning with malevolent intent. You are hereby divested of all titles, all privileges, and all protection under pack law. You are exiled from this territory, effective immediately. Any wolf who shelters you will share your penalty. Godric stood, his subsequent pronouncements carrying the weight of alpha authority. Furthermore, I invoke my inherent right to annul by ancient law. Elder Moira chimed in. A union without the mark or a reciprocal bond is a pact, not a consecration. Then let the pact be dissolved, Godric declared. There was never a bond to shatter, only vows she corrupted. This marriage on the grounds of deception. You obscured your true nature, violated your sacred commitments, and betrayed the very essence of what a mate bond signifies. We were never truly united, merely legally bound. That bond is now dissolved. Lucinda wavered, her world disintegrating around her. Where am I meant to go? You cannot simply, you should have considered that before you annihilated innocent lives. Godric gestured to the guards. Remove her from my presence. Provide her with a single steed, basic provisions, and escort her to the border. Beyond that point, she is no longer our concern." As the guards approached, Lucinda's facade reasserted itself one final time. Fury and animosity supplanted desperation. She regarded Godric with unadulterated venom. "You will rue this. The broken girl you are safeguarding will never be whole enough to assume the role of Luna. She will fail you, just as I apparently failed to eliminate her effectively." "The only regret I harbor," Godric stated softly, "is that it required so much time for me to perceive your true nature." They forcibly removed her from the hall, her shrieks of rage reverberating against the stone walls until they were finally muffled by distance. The assembled pack remained in a state of stunned silence, absorbing the entirety of what they had witnessed. Alpha Brennan approached Godric privately. "I was unaware. For what it's worth, I truly did not comprehend the extent of her capacity, but you were aware of her coldness, her calculation. You dispatched her here knowing a political union would not necessitate affection." "Yes," Brennan conceded. "I perceived that as merely her disposition. I failed to recognize it concealed something far more sinister." He paused. "The girl Iris, will she receive recompense? She will receive vindication and security, and every resource necessary to recover from the atrocities perpetrated by your daughter." Godric's gaze was steely. "Our accord remains intact solely because you conducted yourself with honor this evening. Do not test my leniency further." After Brennan departed, Godric proceeded directly to Iris's quarters. She stood by the window, having overheard the distant commotion, but unaware of the proceedings. "It is concluded," he stated simply. She turned, her amber eyes wide. What transpired? Lucinda confessed before the entirety of the pack. She admitted to everything. Her father publicly disowned her. The council banished her. The marriage has been annulled. He crossed to her in 3 swift strides. "You are liberated, Iris. Truly liberated." The words seemed to take a moment to register. Then her legs gave way, and Godric caught her before she fell, holding her as she finally succumbed. Great, racking sobs, held in check for nearly 5 years, poured out all at once. "It is concluded," he repeated, his hand gently stroking her hair. "She can never harm you again. I give you my word." Chapter 7. Healing and Union. 2 weeks following Lucinda's banishment, Iris awoke to sunlight streaming through eastward-facing windows, warming the guest chambers she still occupied. She stretched cautiously, testing the limits of her mending flesh. The physical wounds were diminishing under the healer's diligent care, their recovery accelerated by her shifter nature now that she was no longer living under constant duress. However, the deeper injuries would require more time. "Good morning," Mabel's voice called through the open doorway. The elderly cook entered, bearing a breakfast tray laden with sustenance, more than Iris could consume in 3 separate meals. Yet Mabel insisted on compensating for years of enforced starvation. "The Alpha inquires if you feel sufficiently well for training today." "Training?" The word still felt foreign. Godric had arranged for a seasoned warrior to instruct her in self-defense, asserting that every pack member should possess the ability to protect themselves. But Iris understood the underlying significance. Learning to fight back was an integral part of reclaiming the power that had been unjustly stripped from her. "Inform him, yes," Iris replied, surprising herself with the eagerness in her voice. The Council of Elders had begun exerting pressure on Godric regarding the selection of a new Luna within days of the annulment. Marriages of political expediency were proposed with alarming regularity. Alliances designed to bolster trade routes, resolve territorial disputes, and project Valdron's enduring strength despite the recent scandal. Godric rejected every single proposition. "I will select my own mate when I deem myself ready," he stated to Elder Thornwick with a finality that precluded further debate. "The pack is stable. Our alliances remain firm. There is no exigency that necessitates another uninspired political arrangement." What he omitted, but what his wolf comprehended with absolute certainty, was that he had already discovered his mate. She simply required time to recuperate before he could properly court her. He visited Iris daily, consistently maintaining a respectful distance to ensure she never felt pressured or cornered. They conversed on every conceivable subject, from trivial matters to profound discussions, pack politics, her progress with the healer, recollections of her parents, his frustrations with the elders' incessant interference. The connection between them deepened with each exchange, fostering a comfort that his marriage had never provided. The healer intends to attempt a novel approach tomorrow, Iris informed him one evening as they sat in the castle gardens. 3 weeks had elapsed since Lucinda's banishment. Iris was finally comfortable enough to venture beyond her assigned chambers. She believes that by accessing the memories of my parents, the positive recollections rather than the trauma, it may facilitate the unlocking of my wolf. How do you feel about that? Iris drew her knees to her chest. A gesture Godric had learned indicated she was contemplating something challenging. Terrified, yet also filled with hope. I have spent 10 years attempting to erase the memory of that night. Perhaps it is time to recall everything else instead. I will be present if you wish me to be, or I can maintain my distance if that would be easier. She looked at him, her amber eyes mirroring the descending sun. I want you present. The session, 3 weeks subsequent to Lucinda's banishment, proved to be the most profound to date. Iris sat cross-legged on the floor of the healer's dedicated space. Godric occupied a chair behind her, close enough to offer solace, yet not so near as to prove distracting. Tell me about your mother, the healer prompted gently. Not about her demise, but about her life. Iris's voice was barely a whisper initially. She used to sing while she worked, ancient melodies from her grandmother's pack. I didn't grasp all the words, but the tune was exquisite. Her eyelids drifted shut. She carried the scent of pine needles and freshly baked bread. Her hands were perpetually dusted with flour. Good. And your father? He possessed remarkable patience. So patient. He taught me the art of tracking by scent when I was 6. We would spend hours exploring the woods. And he never grew exasperated when I made errors. A subtle smile graced Iris's lips. He had a deep, resonant laugh that caused his entire body to tremble. Now, recall the night they perished. Not the violence, but the love. They fought to protect you. They desired your survival. Iris's breathing quickened. Her hands clenched into fists. Within her chest, her wolf stirred. Not with the frantic desperation of the past, but with a resolute purpose, a recognition of what had been lost and what remained. They loved you sufficiently to sacrifice their lives for you, the healer continued. Your wolf attempted to manifest that night to shield them. It has been in waiting ever since, striving to honor their sacrifice. Release it, Iris. Allow it to be free. Something within her fractured, not with pain, but akin to ice yielding after a protracted winter. Her wolf surged forth, and this time, when Iris reached for the transformation, the barriers did not forcefully resist. They dissolved. Her eyes blazed with an amber gold luminescence. Claws emerged from her fingertips. Fangs protruded past her lips. It was not a complete metamorphosis, but it was the most significant progress she had achieved in 10 years. Her wolf was present, aware, no longer confined behind ramparts of trauma. Godric's own wolf responded instantaneously, recognizing hers with a singular, profound certainty that caused his breath to catch. The connection was not merely attraction or affection. It was destiny, a true mate, the bond that their kind seldom encountered but perpetually yearned for. Iris opened her eyes. The amber hue receded, returning to human awareness, yet with her wolf now accessible, palpable, and real. I succeeded. She gasped. Godric, I succeeded. He was beside her in an instant, drawing her into his embrace, holding her as she simultaneously laughed and wept. His wolf purred with profound contentment, finally permitted to be near its mate, finally able to protect and cherish what belonged to it. I am so immensely proud of you, he murmured into her hair, his words imbued with absolute sincerity. The assault commenced at midnight. 3 days later, Iris awoke to a sensation she had never before experienced, a disquietude in the atmosphere, a prickling awareness that imminent danger approached. Her newly awakened wolf sensed it first. Hostile intent, multiple sources, advancing upon the castle with deliberate purpose. She was out of bed and racing through the corridors before conscious thought could fully engage. Guards were strategically positioned throughout the castle, but they were not yet aware. They did not sense what she could. Alpha. She burst into Godric's chambers without preamble, finding him already stirring, responding to an instinct of his own. There are intruders, at least 6, possibly more, approaching from the eastern flank. They intend harm. Godric did not question the source of her knowledge. He acted swiftly, dispatching the mental summons that would rouse his warriors, arming himself and donning his armor with practiced speed. Within minutes, the castle's defenses were fully mobilized. The attackers were mercenaries, engaged by someone sufficiently affluent to seek retribution, even after Lucinda's expulsion. Whether dispatched by the former Luna herself or by Fairmont relatives aiming to obliterate witnesses to the scandal, it mattered little. They were skilled, well-equipped, and had penetrated deeper than anticipated. However, they had not accounted for Iris's recently awakened faculties, the rare gift bestowed by her lineage, the capacity to perceive malevolent intent, to sense peril before it materialized, afforded Valdron's forces just enough forewarning to intercept the assault before it reached vulnerable sectors. The conflict was swift and brutal. Oswin directed the defense with tactical acumen, while Godric personally neutralized the mercenary commander. As dawn broke, 6 assailants lay deceased, and 3 were apprehended for interrogation. Pack members congregated in the courtyard as the prisoners were secured, their voices buzzing with questions and apprehension. Then someone noticed Iris standing beside the Alpha, her amber eyes still reflecting flecks of gold, her posture no longer subservient, but erect with quiet confidence. "She saved us," a young guard announced. She sensed their approach before any of us were aware. Murmurs rippled through the assembled throng. The girl they had dismissed as a broken servant had proven herself more invaluable than any of them could have possibly conceived. Respect, albeit grudging, replaced the pity and disdain they had previously shown. That evening, Godric convened a full pack assembly. Iris stood at his side, no longer concealed or protected, but presented as his equal. The entire territory gathered in the great hall, and palpable tension thrumming through the air. "You are all aware of the events of last night," Godric began, his alpha voice resonating to every corner. "We were subjected to an assault by mercenaries seeking retribution for Lucinda's exposure. We endured because of the courage and prescient foresight of one individual." He turned to Iris, his expression softening visibly. "Iris has demonstrated her worthiness of respect, of honor, and of a position within this pack that far surpasses any prior expectations." He lowered himself to one knee before her, and the hall fell into absolute silence. "Iris, you are my true mate. My wolf has recognized this since the moment I truly perceived you, and my heart has come to understand it in the weeks that have followed. I am now requesting this before witnesses, not out of obligation or political necessity, but because I wish for you to possess the autonomy of choice that Lucinda never granted you." He gently took her hand. "Will you consent to be my Luna? Not under duress of duty or political expediency, but because we mutually choose each other." Tears streamed down Iris's cheeks, yet her voice remained firm. "Yes." The pack erupted in acclamations, not universal, but genuine from those whose opinions truly mattered. The claiming ceremony transpired that very night under the full moon, with pack witnesses and the council's sanction. Godric's bite marked her throat, and her own teeth pierced his skin in the reciprocal claim that rendered them equals. When they united in the privacy of his chambers, when the bond fully solidified, Iris's wolf at last broke free entirely. The complete transformation she had been denied for 10 years surged through her, painful, undeniably, yet transcendent. Her bones reshaped. Fur erupted across her skin, and for the first time since she was 14 years of age, she stood on 4 legs as a fully realized shifter. Her wolf was smaller than Godric's, sleek and dark, with amber eyes that gleamed with intelligence and hard-won resilience. She was not the largest or most powerful shifter in the pack, but she was whole, finally, blessedly whole. Godric's wolf nuzzled affectionately against hers, a gesture of tenderness that caused her heart to swell. They ran through the forest that night, two wolves moving as a single entity, the bond between them singing with inherent rightness. When they reverted to human form at dawn, entangled in his bed with the first light creeping through the windows, Iris touched the claiming mark on her throat with a sense of profound wonder. "I never envisioned possessing this," she whispered. "Family, love, freedom." "You have all of it now," Godric promised, drawing her closer, "and I shall dedicate every single day to ensuring you never forget it." Chapter 8. Luna Ascendant. 6 months had irrevocably transformed everything. Iris stood at the head of the council table. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, a stark contrast to the elaborate hairstyles Lucinda had insisted upon. The morning sun, streaming through tall windows, illuminated the Luna's mark on her throat. Godric's claiming bite, silvered with the passage of time yet still visible, served as a badge of honor she wore with immense pride. "The harvest reports indicate an improvement," Elder Thornwick stated, sliding a parchment across the polished wood. "Your recent overhaul of the servant accommodations has dramatically boosted efficiency. When individuals feel genuinely appreciated, their dedication intensifies." Iris reviewed the figures with a quiet sense of fulfillment. Just 3 months prior, she had implemented extensive alterations to the treatment of the castle staff. Comfortable sleeping quarters replaced the former cramped cells. Meals were now consistently provided with ample portions. A formal grievance procedure was established, empowering any servant to escalate concerns directly to her or to Godric should they face mistreatment from their assigned families. In a move that generated the most discussion, she had instituted mandatory monthly health assessments for all castle personnel. The resident healer now actively screened for indications of mistreatment, insufficient nourishment, or neglect. Any supervisor found to be causing harm to those under their supervision would face immediate dismissal and potentially expulsion from the territory. The elder members of the pack had voiced their disapproval, lamenting what they perceived as excessive pampering of the servants. However, the younger generation, those who had personally witnessed Lucinda's downfall, understood the underlying message. Unchecked authority morphs into oppression, and their Luna would not permit either. "There is one further issue," Elder Moira stated cautiously. "We have received intelligence from the Eastern Territories. Lucinda has been observed attempting to secure a position within Alpha Garrett's retinue." Iris's hand involuntarily went to her abdomen, a protective reflex that had become second nature in recent weeks. "And he rejected her application the moment her identity was confirmed. Her reputation precedes her now. No reputable alpha would risk the scandal of harboring someone with her documented history." Excellent, Iris thought, though she did not voice it. She had expended sufficient emotional energy on Lucinda. The woman was now someone else's burden, or more likely, no one's burden at all, a solitary wanderer with no place to call home. Precisely the fate she had inflicted upon so many others. "Thank you for the update, Elder Moira. Is there anything else demanding immediate attention?" Seeing the council members shake their heads, Iris dismissed them with the effortless authority she had cultivated over months of diligent practice. True leadership, she understood, was not about wielding command through intimidation or artifice. It was about attentive listening, thoughtful adaptation, and the formulation of decisions that served the collective welfare rather than personal aspirations. She located Godric in the training grounds, immersed in combat drills with a cohort of young warriors. Even after years of their union, the sight of him still stole her breath. He exuded controlled strength and a lethal elegance. His dark hair was neatly pulled back, and his beard was impeccably trimmed, despite the physical exertion. He sensed her approach instantly, as he always did, their mate bond resonating with a silent awareness. "Luna," he greeted formally, mindful of the trainees present, but his gray eyes softened with an affection reserved solely for her. "We are currently practicing defensive formations. Would you perhaps care to demonstrate the detection technique?" This had become a regular occurrence. Iris's unique gift, Her innate ability to perceive hostile intentions before they manifested physically made her an exceptionally valuable instructor. Over the preceding months, she had dedicated herself to training scouts and guards to recognize the subtle cues that she detected instinctively. "Identify the immediate threats," she commanded, and the young warriors promptly obeyed. For the next hour, Iris guided them through a series of exercises designed to hone their sensory acuity. She had discovered that her talent was not entirely singular. Other shifters possessed rudimentary versions of the same capacity. With dedicated training, they could cultivate an enhanced threat detection capability, rendering Valdron's defenses virtually impregnable. As the session concluded, Godric gently took her hand as they walked back towards the castle. "The healer sent word. She wishes to see you this afternoon." Iris's other hand instinctively returned to her stomach. The secret she had been safeguarding for 3 weeks, a nascent awareness pressing gently against her consciousness. "I already know what she will tell me." Godric paused in his stride, turning to face her fully. "Iris, I am pregnant." The words were spoken softly, almost reverently. "Approximately 6 weeks along, I believe. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I shared the news." His expression underwent a profound transformation, shock dissolving into sheer wonder, followed by an overwhelming surge of protectiveness. He drew her close, one hand tenderly cupping the back of her head, while the other rested protectively across her still flat abdomen. "Are you afraid?" She had anticipated the question. After years of enduring abuse and profound trauma, pregnancy represented a vulnerability she had once believed herself incapable of surviving. Yet she had also spent months actively healing, learning to trust in her own resilience and the unwavering security Godric provided. "No," she answered honestly. "I am not afraid. Not anymore." That evening, they shared the joyous news with a select gathering of their closest confidants. Mabel openly wept, embracing Iris with a fierce hug that carried the comforting sense of flour, herbs, and home. The esteemed cook, though semi-retired from daily kitchen operations, still oversaw meal preparations and had become the grandmotherly figure Iris had lost far too soon in her childhood. "Your mother would be immensely proud," Mabel whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "So incredibly proud of the woman you have become." Oswin raised his goblet in a solemn toast. "To the future heir of Valdron, may they inherit their mother's wisdom and their father's strength." Later, in the solitude of their chambers, Godric held Iris before the expansive windows that overlooked the vast territory spread out below. The moon hung full and luminous, casting a silvery glow that rendered the mountains almost ethereal. "Do you recall our first night here?" he asked quietly, referring to the period shortly after Lucinda's banishment. "You stood by this very window, as though you couldn't quite believe it was real." "I couldn't," Iris admitted. "I kept expecting to awaken back in that cell, convinced that freedom was merely another cruel illusion." Iris turned in his embrace to face him fully. "Sometimes I still cannot comprehend this is my life, that I am Luna, that I carry our child, that I am permitted to simply experience happiness." "You are not permitted happiness. You have earned it," Godric countered, cupping her face with both hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "Every day, you demonstrate that survival is not merely about enduring. It is about transforming. You took everything Lucinda attempted to shatter and meticulously rebuilt something far stronger from the remnants." Iris pressed her palm over his heart, feeling the steady, reassuring rhythm that mirrored her own. Their bond pulsed between them, a constant affirmation that she was no longer isolated, no longer solely fighting to navigate each day. She possessed purpose, partnership, and profound peace. "The scars remain," she murmured softly. "The physical ones have faded, but the others... Sometimes I wake up and momentarily forget that I am safe. Occasionally, I still flinch when someone raises their hand too quickly." "That is not weakness, my love. That is memory, and memory serves to keep us vigilant." He kissed her forehead tenderly. "But it does not have to define us any longer." A soft knock interrupted their quiet moment. One of the night guards entered at Godric's silent command. his expression one of polite apology. Alpha Luna, I apologize for this intrusion. A situation has arisen requiring your immediate attention. A young woman arrived at the gates seeking sanctuary. She claims to have served as a personal attendant to a Luna in the Western Territories and possesses documentation of systematic abuse. Iris and Godric exchanged a meaningful glance, an entire conversation unfolding in the silent space between their heartbeats. This, they understood, would become their enduring legacy. Not merely justice for Iris, but a powerful precedent that abuse of authority would no longer be met with silence. Escort her to the guest quarters, Iris instructed. Ensure she is provided with sustenance, clean attire, and is made to feel secure. I will speak with her in the morning. After the guard departed, Godric drew her close once more. You are going to help her. Of course I am, Iris replied, because someone once helped me, because someone saw me when I had perfected the art of being invisible. Iris looked up at her mate, her partner, the alpha who had defied every preconceived notion of what power ought to look like. We are going to ensure that every Luna across every territory understands that if they abuse those under their care, there will be tangible consequences. That will undoubtedly make us unpopular in certain circles. Good, Iris stated firmly. I would rather be disliked and act with integrity than be widely admired while remaining complicit. They stood together at the window, gazing out at the territory long into the night. Two wolves who had found solace and strength in each other against insurmountable odds. Iris contemplated the girl she had been merely 6 months prior, broken, terrified, convinced she deserved the suffering inflicted upon her. That girl was gone, transmuted through immense hardship into someone profoundly stronger, someone capable of standing before an entire pack and commanding respect earned through wisdom, not fear. Her parents, she knew, would have been immensely proud. The thought settled with a comforting warmth in her chest, easing an ache she had carried for 14 years. She had survived. More than that, she had truly thrived. The promise she had made to her dying mother, to survive, no matter the cost, had been fulfilled in ways neither of them could have ever envisioned. Iris's wolf stirred contentedly within her, no longer imprisoned or silenced, but an intrinsic and vital part of her very being, free, whole, and finally able to run without trepidation through forests that now belonged to her as much as to anyone. "What are you contemplating?" Godric inquired, sensing the subtle shift in her emotions through their unbreakable bond. "That scars tell stories," Iris replied. "Mine tell of surviving a monster disguised by a beautiful facade, that I was broken and learned to mend, that I was caged and earned my liberation." She placed both hands over her abdomen, where new life was beginning to grow. "And that our child will grow up understanding that their mother possessed the strength to transform profound pain into unwavering purpose. They will also know that their mother is brilliant, compassionate, and occasionally formidable when individuals threaten those under her protection." Iris laughed, the sound now effortless, a stark contrast to the early days. "Only occasionally. I am attempting to be diplomatic." She turned in his arms, rising onto her toes to kiss him with a passion that still surprised her. The realization that she could desire someone without fear, could experience intimacy without anticipating pain. That true love did not necessitate subservience or the erosion of self, but rather the conscious choice to stand alongside another as an equal. When they finally broke apart, Godric rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Luna of Valdron. Today, tomorrow, and every day we are granted." "I love you too, Alpha, my mate, my partner, my chosen." Outside their windows, the moon continued its steady ascent across the nocturnal canvas, illuminating a territory that was now demonstrably safer, more equitable, and infused with a greater sense of compassion than it had been under previous leadership. Pack members slept soundly, secure in the knowledge that their Luna would safeguard them, not through the imposition of fear or manipulative tactics, but through genuine concern for their welfare. And within the guest quarters, a young woman who had fled unspeakable abuse, shed tears of profound relief, finally believing that sanctuary was more than just an empty word. Iris had honored her mother's final charge, survive. But she had accomplished so much more than mere endurance. She had constructed a life worthy of living, forged a legacy worth bequeathing, and discovered a love worth celebrating. The scars would always remain, silent testaments to battles fought and triumphs achieved, yet they no longer dictated her identity. They were simply interwoven threads in her narrative, the darker passages that made the brighter ones shine with even greater brilliance.